It's not doing it. Well, it's not doing it. We're live. Hello, ladies. I am going to run to Instagram and make sure that we are connected, which we are. So, welcome to Literary Nights with Unsolicited Press. We are here with two wonderful writers, authors this evening. There's Darcy Schumer. Hello, everyone. It took a while for the for the countdown to happen. I have no idea why. I don't even know if it's Mercury retrograde, but anyway, here we are. Thank you all for joining us. We are here with Darcy Schumer and Lauren Westerfield. Before we begin, I want to tell all of our people who are watching to please hit the like button, subscribe on YouTube and on Instagram to Unsolicited Press so that you can be notified whenever we have a reading, which happens every other Wednesday, 5:30 Pacific time and 8:30 Eastern time. So now that that's out of the way, also one more thing. If you want to make a comment from wherever you are, we'll be able to see it, and I will be able to bring it onto the comment just like that. So we'll be able to see it. So if you want to have any questions, we'll be able to see them too. So welcome, Darcy. Welcome, Lauren. I'm excited to hear your work this evening. Tell us a little bit about your book, and then do your reading. And following both of your readings is a Q&A. So take it away, Darcy.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you so much, Rosalia, for hosting. And I also just want to say thank you to the Unsolicited Press team and Summer for just being awesome champions of the literary arts. And thank you for being here with me, Lauren. And I'm so excited about Depth Control. Congratulations. This is great. So I have two books with Unsolicited Press, a short story collection called 6 Months in the Midwest, and a novel entitled The Ballad of Two Sisters. I am going to read from something I'm currently working on. I'm going to read from a novel in progress that's called The Kingdom Melody. And I'm going to read the first chapter. It should be pretty self-explanatory, so I don't think I need to do much setup. But this one is for all the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses out there. So if you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness and you're tuned in, I'm looking at you. All right, here we go. Early January in Wisconsin, the world is still, wrapped in white, the air clean and cold. Heather's father blasts dry heat in his sedan, rubs his hands together as he waits for her to buckle her seatbelt. I hope you've got on layers, he says, flashing his car dealer's smile. This is as warm as it's going to get today. 5 degrees Fahrenheit, the car's thermometer reads. Heather is wearing her thickest pair of tights, 2 pairs of socks, a sweater, a parka, but she has to wear a skirt. There's no other option for women and girls. Saying nothing to her father, she snaps her safety belt and makes herself small, conserving her body's heat, trying to convince herself that in another 30 minutes, her feet won't be numb with cold, her face won't sting with it. They pull out of the parking lot of the Kingdom Hall, a brick, quick-built, nearly windowless fortress fronted by a dirty marsh that grows bigger, deeper, year after year as businesses burgeon nearby. Soon they are speeding down Highway 53, and Eau Claire, a mid-sized college town christened Clearwater by French fur traders, opens in front of them. On the right is Antlers Motel, a budget motor lodge, the sign of which features a large white-tailed buck's head. On the left is Wu's, a shuttered Chinese pagoda that once served cocktails, shiny stir-fry, and chow mein. Past Antlers and Wu's, strip malls, pawn shops, churches, and chain restaurants litter the sides of the road. Dirty snow collects along icy sidewalks. Deciduous trees reach naked into gray skies. They are in the heart of the Chippewa Valley, an area named after a mispronunciation of the word Ojibwe. They are in the heart of Wisconsin, of Wisconsin, where Ojibwe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, and other indigenous people live and thrive despite the ghostliness of names on maps. Heather leans her head against the car window as the scenery made foreign by today's regrettable errand floats by. Her father cuts over to Claremont Avenue, which runs east to west across the Chippewa River and through the middle of the city until Memorial High School, where Heather as a freshman appears. He turns down Fairfax Street and parks across from it. The school's mascot, a bald eagle named Old Abe, looks down on them from her perch on the roof. Heather's father switches off the ignition and exits the vehicle without a word. Reluctantly leaving the warmth of the car, Heather waits a beat before following. "Don't make her do it, Bob. It's hard enough on the kids as it is," her mother had said when her father mentioned he would take Heather out in service near the school. "They all know anyway. What does it matter if she goes door to door?" her father replied, scooping a second serving of instant mashed potatoes on his plate. "My point exactly. They all know. We go there where there is a need, and that's all there is to it. End of discussion." He stared down at his plate, sawing an overcooked slab of round steak into smaller and smaller pieces until they were fit for a child's mouth. Her mother bowed her head as Heather had seen her do many times before and said nothing else. "Women need to be in subjection to their husbands," is the line Heather hears repeated from her mother and in the Jehovah's Witnesses teaching and literature, though sometimes she wonders if her mother actually believes it. This morning, however, her mother is at a Bible study, ostensibly with another sister from the congregation, but Heather swears her mother said she was going to be with Sister Johnson, and Sister Johnson was at the brief meeting before service this morning. It all seems strange, a hangnail in her mind, though right now she has more pressing concerns. "Let's start here," her father says, gesturing to a tan ranch-style house on the corner with a bare maple tree in the front yard and an oversized Ford pickup adorned by Green Bay Packers stickers in the driveway. "Isn't it liberating to let everyone know you're representing Jehovah?" he says as they approach the house. The frozen air burns Heather's nose, renders her mute. It's the opposite, she thinks. Once on the house's stoop, her father looks at her and nods toward the door. "Knock," his face is saying. So she knocks softly, a wave of nausea raising in her gut. She's thankful she emptied her stomach in the toilet at the Kingdom Hall this morning, so there's nothing left to vomit, even if she wanted to. "Like you mean it," her dad says, rapping against the wood with his thick knuckles. Footsteps approach. The door opens to Mrs. Cots, one of her classmates' mothers. She hopes Debbie isn't there, hopes Debbie won't come to the door and see her standing across the threshold, as if not being allowed to participate in extracurricular activities, not being allowed to socialize with her classmates, and being forced out during anything remotely related to holidays isn't enough. Here they are. "Hi there," Mrs. Cott says as she wipes her hands on a half apron. Warm air and the smell of pancakes and bacon waft out the door. Mrs. Cott smiles, revealing a dot of light pink lipstick on one of her front teeth, which Heather notices right before she sees Debbie sitting on the couch watching TV in her pajamas. Heather tries to hide her face, but it's impossible. "Good morning," her dad says, and then, "Go ahead, Heather." Heather's face is flushed, but she has no choice now. "Good morning. My name is Heather, and I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses," she starts. "No, thank you," Mrs. Cott says, her smile disappearing. She shuts the door abruptly before Heather's father can interject with one of his stock objection beaters, lines spoon-fed to him by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. He turns to her and smiles. "Onward and upward," he says, extending his arm in an invitation for her to walk down the stairs and away from the house. He pulls a list from his bag, pausing in front of the next house. "This is a do not call," he says, the term witnesses use for houses where they've been asked by the householder never to return. So they skip it and walk to the one beside it, another ranch style with a tree in the front yard. Heather knocks on the door, but no one answers. They move down the street to a 2-story white house with an aging exterior. As they approach it, Heather notices a piece of siding near the very top of the house hanging crooked, a loose tooth just waiting to fall. All right, kid, her father says, I have a good feeling about this one. He nods his head toward the door once again, and Heather knocks, harder this time to avoid his criticism. The door swings open, and a teenager stands in the threshold. Heather, he says. She recognizes him immediately. It's Sean, an older boy from her advanced algebra class. He has an Irish face, brilliant blue eyes, a thin straight nose, and a kind countenance, making many in the class swoon. They have often been paired up to work together, which makes her nervous every time, though he has been nothing but easygoing and friendly with her. She sweats beneath her sweater, but shivers too as Sean looks from her to her father. She can't find her voice, and after an awkward pause, her father jumps in. That's her, and I'm her dad. Nice to meet you, young man. Sean, her classmate says, holding out his hand. Robert, her dad says, taking Sean's hand in his. Heather watches their hands touch against the backdrop of Sean's living room, a modest but clean space with oversized furniture and fluffy pillows that make Heather wish she could collapse inside. Can I help you? Sean says. She realizes he has no idea what she and her father are or why they are here. Why would he? They only have that one class together and aren't in the same grade. No, but we can help you, her father says, flashing his special smile again. He turns toward her. I'll let Heather tell you why we're here. Heather's muscles beg her to run. Her heartbeat accelerates as though she's already in motion, her tongue swollen with dryness. She sucks at her cheeks, trying to gather enough saliva to swallow and speak. Go ahead, her father says, patting her on the back. Sean's eyes search her face. Have you ever wondered what it'd be like to live forever on a paradise earth? She chokes out, forcing herself to look completely through Sean. The Bible tells us this is what our future can hold. She goes on, not giving him time to react. There are many scriptures that prove this, but I will share my favorite with you. From her bag, she pulls a leather-bound copy of the New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures with her name embossed in gold on the front and opens it to a marked passage. My favorite is right here in Isaiah. It's Isaiah 35, 1-4. She should look up at Sean now, look right into his eyes, but she can't, isn't able to, won't. She stares into the Bible instead, into the crack of the spine of the book, though she's had the passage memorized for years. She keeps her head down, giving the illusion of reading. The wilderness and the parched land will exult, and the desert plain will be joyful and blossom as the saffron. Without fail it will blossom. It will rejoice and shout for joy. The glory of Lebanon will be given to it, the splendor of Carmel and of Sharon. They will see the glory of Jehovah, the splendor of our God. Strengthen the weak hands and make firm the knees that are shaking. Say to those who are anxious at heart, be strong, do not be afraid. Look, your own God will come with vengeance. God will come with retribution. He will come and save you. Saying words so familiar lures her into calm, and for a split second, she can almost forget she's standing on Sean's doorstep, that she's under her father's watchful eye, that a wind has come up which seems to permeate her parka, making her shiver anew. Sean, a man's voice calls from inside the house. Who are you talking to? Sean looks over his shoulder and then back at Heather and her father. It's just someone from school, he says. He smiles at Heather, but before either he or Heather can say anything else, his father blows into the doorway, eyes narrowed. She may be from school, but that's not why she's here, you dolt, he says, pushing himself in front of Sean. Listen, we don't want what you're peddling. Now get off my property before I make you, all right? Dad, Sean says, but his father slams the door. The sound echoes in Heather's ears, interrupted by the father's muffled chastising. She thinks she hears the word cult, which is when her father pulls her away. They won't be talking like that at Armageddon, will they? Her father says. Tears form in Heather's eyes. The cold makes it worse. She tips her head back to stop them from running down her cheeks. Instead, they trickle to her temples, dampen her fine hair. Eventually, they'll freeze there, leaving a few strands inflexible, tiny icicles framing her face. I'll take the next one, her father says with something like mercy, which surprises her. They go to the next house and the next, recording who is not interested, where they place literature, and who is not at home. By the time they finish this portion of Fairfax Street and get back in the car, the cold has infiltrated Heather's winter tights, burning the space between the bottom of her skirt and the top of her cheap winter boots. Her toes are numb, and she has endured alternating amounts of ire and sympathy from the mothers and fathers of several of her classmates. Can we go on break, she asks, as they drive to the next portion of their assigned territory. Please? Normally, she tries to conceal her moods from her father, but today she doesn't have the energy. Too early, he says, and then seeming to sense her recalcitrance, you need to get some gumption, girl. It's called the good news for a reason, right? He pauses. Right? She sighs audibly and leans her head against the passenger side window with a thud, immediately regretting it. Is this the attitude you want to have for Jehovah? He says. Though she isn't looking at him, she can imagine his mouth, the way it moves, his lips at an exaggerated curl, the sides of them fruitlessly reaching toward his brow. Heather, do you hear me? She should respond, she knows, but she is cold, weak feeling, and her jaw aches, an electric tremble running through it. Heather. This time his voice is flat, his eyes are on her, but she continues staring out the window. I'm talking to you. Still, she doesn't respond, and her father pulls the car off the road. They've driven across Claremont Avenue and down the State Street Hill to the 3rd Ward, a neighborhood with rows of old houses with sprawling porches and wood siding. She wonders if the houses are older than the truth, older than the Jehovah's Witnesses. Everyone tells her that Jehovah has always been there, but she can't fathom it. Even thinking about it seems dangerous. Close your eyes, her father says. She turns toward him and furrows her brow. Close your eyes, Heather. She does as she's told, but sighs loudly again. The car's motor idles, the speakers play the orchestral music of the Witnesses' kingdom melodies at a low volume. Her toes ache as she flexes and extends them in the car's growing heat. Imagine all these people, he says. Imagine everyone you saw today and the people you go to school with. I want you to really imagine their faces. Her heart quickens. She sees Debbie. She sees Mrs. Kotz. She sees Sean, Brittany, Amy, Kate, Janelle, Jake, Katie, Jordan, Ryan, all of them in a row, people she cares for, even though she's been made to keep herself separate. Now imagine them all gone. Imagine them all destroyed and dead forever. Is that what you want? Do you want all these people to die at Armageddon? The signs of the last days are all around us, and if we don't help these people, they'll die. Do you want them to die? He says. She can feel him leaning toward her. He smells like Old Spice and mint gum, a slight staleness floating above it all. She opens her eyes and looks down at her boots. Drops of water roll off them as she flexes and extends her toes again. Answer me, he says. Do you want these people to die? She moves her hands inside her mittens, her fingers stinging as they thaw. Do you? He switches off the music and puts his palm atop her head. She holds her breath, looks straight ahead through the windshield. Outside, 2 little kids bundled in bright snowsuits stand in their front yard trying to build a fort, though the snow isn't fit for it. They look happy, happy for each other, happy to be outdoors, happy for the structure they try to build, and what her father says pulls at her. No, she says, though the word doesn't make it from her mouth. What? I can't hear you. She bites the nail of her forefinger and a strip of it peels away, the sliver resting on her tongue. She can't help but think that if her mother were here, none of this would be happening. Her mother would insulate her. Her mother would keep her father at a simmer. Answer me, do you want these people to die? He removes his hand from her head roughly, and the sliver of nail stabs the roof of her mouth. Listen, you've had the truth before you can remember, and now you're sitting here wasting the time we have to share it. People aren't getting access to the truth this very minute because you can't answer a simple question. It's selfish, Heather. Do you want to be a selfish person? She shakes her head. That's what I thought. Then tell me what you want. Say it now. I don't want all these people to die, she says. The scimitar of her fingernail tumbles out of her mouth, piercing her lip on the way. It lands on the car's black mat. I don't want anyone to die, she says, putting a fingertip to her lower lip. Then let's keep going. We have to keep going. He jerks the car back onto the street. Her chest aches, and it's difficult to breathe there alone in the car with her father. He has good intentions, but he doesn't realize how his passion affects others sometimes, she hears her mother say. I'll try talking to him and it will be okay, I promise, she hears her mother say. But then her mother's voice dissipates into the car's recirculated air. The time is short and the need is great, her father says. He turns the music back on in artificially joyous kingdom melody called We're Jehovah's Witnesses plays, and he whistles along. Proudly we declare God's name, bearing witness to his fame, news about his kingdom, boldly we proclaim. We help others come to see how the truth can set them free. She pulls off her winter boots, gray fake leather things with the lining ripping out, and cups her toes in her hands, rubbing blood back through them. Closing her eyes, she imagines campfires, hot baths, heat registers, the humid air of late July as the song hits its ebullient chorus. We're Jehovah's Witnesses. We speak out in fearlessness. Ours is the God of true prophecy. What he foretells comes to be. Then she eases her boots back on, readying herself for the next street, the next house, the next door, quietly awaiting her knock. Thank you.
What a fabulous reading. And that's unpublished yet, right? Okay. And so now we're on with Lauren. Lauren, you want to tell us a little bit about what you're going to be reading tonight and a little bit about your book?
Yeah, thank you so much, Rosalia, and to Darcy and to Unsolicited Press, Summer, the whole team, the whole authorial family. I'm grateful to everyone. And Darcy, that was just like one hell of an intro chapter. I'm so excited for your forthcoming book and to read your books that already are out with Unsolicited Press. That's so exciting. Just some incredible images there, and especially the biting of the nail and hitting the roof of the mouth when the father moves his hand rough. Like I've got that image just like burned into my brain now. It was just brilliant. So thank you so much for sharing that. What a teaser. So I'm going to read a little bit from Depth Control, my first book, and my book with Unsolicited Press. And then I'm also going to read a little bit, just a few pages of my second book, which is forthcoming next spring, or spring 26, from the University of Massachusetts Press. But I'll start with Depth Control. I have been on a little bit of like a mini tour with this book, doing some readings from it. And so I thought I would actually just try starting at the beginning and read the little, what for lack of a better word is sort of the prologue. It's not really called one, but it sort of is one. Depth Control the subtitle is Essays and Autofictions. And it is a work of nonfiction, but it really stretches the boundaries of that in some ways. I think playing with form, playing with the edges of the creative nonfiction in terms of imaginative reality, and the autofictions piece is also partially because I wrote this book, the majority of the content in this book, a number of years ago now, and as I edit and move further and further away from the immediacy of the nonfiction, it becomes more of a fiction. I mean, there's so much memory involved. There's so much fallibility of memory. And of course, there are also people who are characters in my life that have full, rich lives outside of this book. And to me, it seemed a bit more accurate to call it an autofiction because of how those people sort of glance throughout my life in this little encapsulation of it. So Depth Control is sort of a coming of age story in some ways. It's sort of a relationship narrative in some ways. And it also does all kinds of weird formal stuff. And I'm going to read just the first piece, which is called Indentations. And all you need to know about this one is that it's justified to the right of the page instead of the left. So if you see a poem justified to the left with the line breaks taking place on the right side of the page and kind of moving along the edge, this piece does the reverse. It's not technically a poem, but I suppose it could be. So the ebb and flow happens on the left-hand side, and then the right-hand side is directly justified. And other than that, I will just read it, and then we'll hear from the other piece. And forgive me if my voice is gravelly. I'm getting over a weird cold that still has me sounding frog-like. So I will do my best. All right, indentations. What I know is smaller than you'd think. My finger when I touch the moon-chewed driftwood on my desk, a single lemon seed forgotten in a cup. Maybe you can't see this. Like I said, it's small and intricate, which is to say, the truth. People often think that truth is vast, untenable, like love or God or sun-gold desert. People are wrong about this. You, I think, are wrong. You aren't looking close enough. I'm asking, and when I say you, I might be speaking to my finger as it reaches, stretching down the hollow cup-neck darkness. Or I might be speaking to the fingers of a former lover as he passes me outside the window of a coffee shop or grips the flesh around my hip bones in the sweat drip of last summer. Or I might be speaking to the fingers of a lover who is very new, to red and rust, patterning the sheets after he reaches, stretches up inside. Sometimes I'm no bigger than a question, than a finger, than an eyeball, than a bite mark, than a voice wrapped up in all of you, seawood, citrus, bone. This is what I'm trying to explain. How slippery it is, you are, and why eventually we find ourselves unsoggy first, then dry. Forgotten in our dailiness, and every night, the moon making another hungry pass. This is how it always goes. What I know is true, the way this water on my tongue and on my throat and my esophagus and trickling between my ribs is true. That when I said I would still love you for a while, I was both lying and confessing. And what of it? What does it matter if tonight the moon is full, its body stretched and eight-limbed like a spider, and the sidewalk sweats with new May heat, and you are in an airplane heading south over the moonrise hills, and I am in a short red dress you loved once, slipped once, up over my thighs and belly skin, slipped the flowers and the cotton up and up, but not all the way off, and fucked me fast and scared the cat. What does it matter if you loved me once? And once upon a time last May, you were again boarding a plane. Or maybe you, who so often left me without leaving, your body always running warm, your eyes forever fixed upon the stars. Or you, who sits beside me even now, your closeness like a postcard, your absence hovering between us like a breath. It matters because of this again, because the pattern is a wave, because the pattern is a river. Because the pattern is a hidden cove receding from a shore that I have never seen and always known. I say again, nearly, to a quick fuck afternoon in May, to a red dress or your hands, but you would say that isn't how it works, and I would say that you are wrong. This is what I know. This is how I work. Suppose I wandered back into again and counted every lemon that you bought because I told you that I liked them, squeezed and dropped into hot water in the morning. Every seed caught waterlogged and left to crack dry in the sink. Suppose I wandered back into again and wondered at this hunger, what drives the biting, wanting, yours and mine. Suppose I counted off the letters of the alphabet, A, then B, then C, and then... Suppose I wandered back to pick the lock that keeps me separate from you, no matter how conjoined our bodies might have been some nights and mornings, wet and stuck so close that no air could get through, or wet and bleeding on the white sheets of your strange white bed, or dry and slick, just like a dream birth, like a pearl. Suppose I recognize how much I have resisted this containment, even as I hungered for your arms, a box to crawl inside. And then suppose I say, this is not about you. You might think I'm lying. You would be wrong. This is not about the you think you know. The you of 2 strong wrists and thinning hair, 3 tattoos and 1 weak heart. Or you of poetry and sea glass eyes, of menthol in my favorite hands. Or you of hair so long and black and heavy like a funeral, soft palms brown and laced with sweat. Or even you, as in the you of me, of here and now and lip-bit thought, of flitting hands and bony shoulders, bloodshot eyeballs, tongue tracing the outline of night-bludgeoned teeth. Not as such. What I mean to say, this is not about your body. Later, there will be nothing left. I'm trying to explain. All the yous inside of me, voices, fingers, citrus teeth, and how they touch, how they beckon and recede, how they bite into the weave of me, then stick. I want to talk about your body as a mordant form, about components, yours and mine, fingers, forearms, tattoos, lemons, sea glass, cat hair, and how they constitute a frame, a pattern, box, nesting all of you and me and us inside. Something to contain the things I've come to know or want to. All the small things that are true, all the small things that are true again. It isn't easy. Not like orange pith or green gold prairie hills in springtime or a quick red dress. The truth is more like reaching. As I run my finger down the dish soap slick ceramic, groping for the seed. Or else it is the want. I want to know, want someone to want to know about the seed. That's the end of that piece. So that's the introduction to depth control, and then all the different U's unfurl and unfold from there. Excuse me, I'm sorry, my voice is still so gravelly. So I wanted to also share something very different, and that is just the first couple of pages of my second book, Woman House, which is more of a memoir and essay. It's a bit more straightforward in terms of the essaying and the nonfiction component. And this is a book dedicated to my mother, and it's very much about my relationship with my mother. So more conventional memoir territory in a lot of ways, although the lyricism and aesthetics are still very important to me in this book. And it's a book about my relationship with my mother, but also inherited trauma, illness, caretaking, art making, addiction, old movies, literature, and kind of, also coming of age again in some ways, but very much in relation to gender and to mothers and daughters, and how those relationships really, form us in so many ways, especially in those ways that we kind of can't ever quite know, that the person that our mother was before we came along, and always trying to know what that is, and never quite being able to capture it. So I'm just going to read the first couple pages of this, and then I will stop, and we'll have our Q&A. And I'm excited to hear Darcy's thoughts on her work, and to answer any questions folks have for me. And thanks again for Zalia for hosting. This essay is titled "A Broom to Remove the Dust." It is the introductory piece to the book, so I shouldn't need to offer too much more context than I already have, so I'll just get into it. A broom to remove the dust. Immediately upon exiting the elevator, you will first turn right. Make a second tight right into a glorified alcove dubbed ECT Waiting. The walls will be a pale mint green, so pale it's almost white, but also not at all white. You'll know because the ceiling will be very white. The chairs, cheap pleather gray and faux light birch, the contrast clear. There will be an old-fashioned telephone on one of 3 matching side tables, the one nearest the entry to the alcove and directly underneath the wall-mounted television set, which will be off. The phone will be black, the numbered buttons gray and punchable. There will be a laminated sign above the phone requesting patients to please call this number, followed by a number to alert staff of arrival. The first time you will read this number to your mother as she dials, stand above her silver head, her hair a squarish cloud of fluff above a black and white striped t-shirt. You'll try, in other words, to make this easier. You'll notice some things now and others later. Later, for example, the black lockbox on the wall beneath the sign, purposes unknown. Later, the slim crucifix that hangs against the center wall between 2 dull, mismatched, matted prints in frames, scenes of Paris, windowsills, boulangerie, none of them lined up exactly, each a little off. Later, one slight desk lamp, decorative in curlicue wrought iron, inexplicable, beneath the halogen-bathed halls in this, a unit only open until noon, 3 days a week. You'll learn to notice these and other things as you log time. Learn to recognize the other faces, bodies here beside you. Everybody comes and goes. The schedule changes, new faces appear. Some you'll wind up talking to, others not. Either way, this is where you'll wait 3 days each week for 2 weeks, and then 2 days for the third week. You'll sit and read and look and think and drink your coffee. Down the hall, your mother will lie back on a gurney to be seized. A medically induced seizure is a mystery even to the shrinks. That's what my mom at 67 persists in calling them, the shrinks. That it works against depression is not only proven, but impressive, a success rate, according to researchers at Johns Hopkins, higher than any other single treatment or psychiatric medication. Controversial and uncertain when it comes not to the if, but to the why of its effectiveness, seizure therapy is just that, therapy. Not torture, not shock treatment, and most certainly no ecstatic paroxysm of pain or pleasure. In Cole Swenson's translation of Now, Now, Louison, Jean Frimon's Portrait in Motion of the late Louise Bourgeois, Frimon renders Bourgeois' inner dialogue, considering the experience of bodies sent into hysterics. Quote, in a seizure, the body becomes a sculpture, the eyes popping out, the wrists twisted outward, the ankles angling in. These past 2 midsummer evenings, each spent in a downtown hotel in Spokane near the hospital, I've devoured Frimon's novella. 2 nights, 2 bars, each episode an effort to assuage the neck and shoulder tension, the worry and relief that saturate these days begun at ECT waiting. I stumbled on the book by chance back in March, just weeks after getting a rendition of Bourgeois' spiral woman figure tattooed on my right tricep. Though I bought a copy eagerly, not only for the subject, but also for the aesthetics of the physical object itself, smooth, white, slender, the title in classic Courier along the spine, it took until this week to crack it open. And once begun, I couldn't stop. Couldn't unsee the parallels between this story, this woman's concerns, and my own at this exact and trying moment. The moment in question is July 2019. I'm 34 years old and staring down my second year as a full-time college writing instructor, the first a singular blur of English 101 composition papers and early morning commutes, and attempts to revise my graduate school lifestyle of late nights drinking and writing and arguing with poet friends down at the bar, of predetermined reading lists and manuscript deadlines and minimal teaching loads into something resembling stable adulthood. At the same time, I'm living across town from my mother and her distinct accumulations of wingtip Oxford shoes and 2 pink lipsticks, striped T-shirts and bottles of cheap sweet Riesling, fresh flowers and French bread and stagnant sadness, and a host of health concerns spinning out from a series of surgeries and cancer treatments in the years surrounding her separation from my father. It is a moment of high tension, a hot North Idaho summer, bright and brittle and dry. My mother's sporadic depression has, in recent months, become acute, her body a constant liability. In response, my own body tightens inward, muscle and organ gripping a disordered anxiety I've yet to recognize for what it is. Amidst this difficulty, this pinching fear, Bourgeois' fascination with the body, its geometry, its rotundities, has come to fascinate me almost as much as her life and work. Ever since my friend Sarah sent me a postcard depicting one of Bourgeois' mid-century pieces from the Tate Modern in London, blue, abstract, watercolor, untitled, I've found myself curious, drawn in by the peculiarity and independence of her strokes, her bodily awareness, her iterative attention to the little oddities, spiders, breasts, cellular arrangements of this, our animality, our life. The tattoo idea was born of obsession and superficial research, but the tattoo itself, the getting of it, transformed into a commitment of sorts. To Bourgeois, to her interests, to understanding her art and myself in parallel. I admire, even envy, certain aspects of her life, her creative audacity and determined psychological investigation, her independent approach to the work of making and remaking, asking questions, chasing down her loves in every shape and stroke. To create something where nothing had been before, that's sculpting, writes Frimon as Bourgeois. Such is a tattoo. Such is a seizing body, headless and suspended from a string. Such is a synaptic flash. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much for that powerful reading. Both of you read very powerful things, one fiction, one nonfiction. But the thing that connects you both is you both write about parental things. One a father and daughter, and the other a mother and daughter. And let's talk about mining our lives in order to create art a little. So I'll ask you each what inspired these particular works. So I guess we'll start with Darcy and then go to Lauren, since that's alphabetical and I'm trying to be fair.
Yeah, so I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, and when I was in graduate school at Hamline University, hi Sheila O'Connor, one of my professors is here. I started kind of thinking about writing about those experiences, and I actually wrote a short story that in graduate school that now has become this novel. Um, I think it really sort of took me a long time to be able to write about that part of my life, because for a long time felt a lot of shame surrounding how I grew up. It wasn't something that I wanted to advertise to people when I was a teenager or younger. But as I've gotten older, I've just kind of accepted, like, yeah, I didn't grow up like everybody else, but it's okay. And I think with that acceptance, it's been easier to write about it. And this writing this novel was fairly cathartic, and it also, I've been working on it for a long time, but the bulk of the writing happened pretty quickly because I think the story had been marinating for such a long time. So yeah, that's basically it.
Well, it sounds almost I mean, it sounds pretty polished to me. So if it happened fairly quickly, that's pretty impressive because your details are really astonishing, like the sliver of the nail pierce. It's just so incredibly detailed. And so, Lauren, talk about what inspired your piece.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to. Yeah, I think, I was just writing like an acknowledgements page for the second book, the memoir, and really realizing as I was doing so that I started off writing, when I first began writing creative nonfiction and creative writing at all. I sort of, without meaning to, was writing about my family and specifically my mother. And I think part of me resisted that at first. Because I was afraid it was sort of cliche. And I also originally began writing because I wanted to be funny and I wanted to be David Sedaris or Sloane Crossley, and that did not happen at all. But it sort of forced me into confronting family, and then I realized that either these are not funny stories, or I am not a funny writer. That's not quite what I do, or at least not in this way. But then I sort of had to find my way into what I did do and what I was most, unable to put down in terms of subject matter and themes. And then I went to graduate school at the University of Idaho, MFA program. And I got really immersed in reading a lot of these genre bending, genre crossing books. And I was heavily influenced by Maggie Nelson's work in Bluets and the Argonauts and a number of other books from there. And then I got really into writing these more kind of relational pieces. And so I abandoned the familial stuff for a while and focused heavily on romantic relationships and the body and gender and autonomy and patriarchy in this sort of like compressed poetic lyrical space. And I was a grad student, so I was trying to, show off all the things I could do with form. And then during the pandemic, I came back to the things that I kind of had never been able to let go of entirely with my family and my mother, and realized I had a book to write about that relationship and that sort of original impetus to write in the first place. And that's where Woman House came from. So I think, I was grateful to escape the family writing for a little while. Maybe, Darcy can relate to that for different reasons, but that's sort of like moving away from it. But then there's a necessity to come back to it, I think, in terms of the whole why write in the first place question. So yeah, a blend of things.
So it's amazing to me that you both are exploring almost autobiographical topics, yet one, Lauren, you went in the way of creative nonfiction, and Darcy went in the way of fiction. Can you sort of talk about what led you to take these two very different avenues to explore similar material, autographical material?
Sure. I would say so. My project is, it's reflective of my own experiences for sure. Being having grown up a Jehovah's Witness, but the story itself is not my story. It's something that I witnessed happen when I was growing up. The book has to deals with a family falling apart due to infidelity within this religious tradition. So this was something that I kind of witnessed, and I felt very haunted by the story for a long period of time. And so that's kind of why I approached it. But fiction fiction is my first genre. It's my big love. So this was sort of the only vehicle I had, I think, to tell this story.
And one doesn't really consider the infidelity, which is a big source of tension and conflict, which is, the engine of fiction in a super religious um, setting. But I guess it happens more than people want to realize.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Lauren, can you talk about what uh, inspired you toward creative nonfiction as opposed to fictionalizing the because anybody who is broken up with anybody else or who's grown away from someone else emotionally can definitely relate to your first piece, where it's heartbreaking to experience, but even heartbreaking to suspend, to watch or empathize with someone else going through the heartbreak.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that comment. First of all, like I said, I was inspired initially as a creative nonfiction writer by funny essayists writing about families and breakups and stuff, and that it was very appealing to me. And then once I started writing, sort of found my way into these other avenues for expressing the stories I had to tell. I think that I tried to fictionalize a family story once early on in my sort of fledgling writing career, taking classes, and it was awful. I was trying to be sort of arch and funny, and it was just like, I think my teacher said it was like the saddest thing she'd ever read. I was not trying to do that, and I was like, maybe this is not, my wheelhouse. I find fiction incredibly daunting, and I'm so impressed with Darcy and Rosalia and everything else, that everyone else who can do it, because it stymies me. But I was really into poetry as a literary student when I was younger, and I found my way back into that enthusiasm for poetry when I was in grad school, pursuing creative nonfiction as my focus, but poetry was sort of my second area. And I think I found, I'm really interested in the lyric and image driven writing, and I love the freedom. I was very jealous too of the freedom that my poet friends had to be the speaker, and no matter how autobiographical their work was, it was the speaker, and you could just like make the image weird and move away from the reality of, in nonfiction, someone's like, well, tell us more about the dad. And like, I want to understand your motivation. And in poems, it was just like, now he's a bird, you can do whatever you want. And I loved that freedom. And I was just like, I want to do that, but in an essay, like I'll say it's me, and then I'll just like make the image weird. So I was really enjoying that space to auto-fictionalize some of the more vulnerable material. But then I think it was also important to me, maybe kind of on a psychological, personal growth and evolution level, to like kind of own the vulnerability too, and not be like, I don't know who that is, entirely. So yeah, it was a vulnerable project to write about relationships in that form, but the formal experimentation and the lyricism and some of the poetic kind of tools in the toolbox gave me some space to work through the stuff that was a little harder to say directly, like, hi, this is me and my breakup, when I needed some space to, or my uncertainty about, whether I'm lovable, or my uncertainty about whether I'm with the right person, or if I should ever be with anybody, or, like, what am I doing right now? Like that kind of uncertainty. I found the creative nonfiction with a very big capital C in creative, like all caps creative, was super freeing in that way.
Well, that certainly makes a lot of sense, because if you were the fiction writer, you could have imagined 9 million ways to murder or put that person in lots of compromising situations, which is
Could have
what
gone
if.
so many new directions, right?
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about the writing process. Do each of you write every day? How do you approach the work? We all know as writers that it's sit in chair and do the work, but it's once you sit in the chair, how do you manage the work? So let's talk about discipline and, do you write every day from that? Because there's a lot of emerging and new writers who listen to us. So talk a little bit about your process as a writer.
Sure. For me, it kind of depends on what I'm working on. There's certain things that if I start, I feel called to work on it every day. So, like with this novel, I mainly wrote this on sabbatical and during the summer because I get so busy during the school year when I'm teaching that I can't work on it for a day or two, put it down for a week and come back to it. I just like there's too many threads. I just can't do it. So I'll be doing another revision on this summer. So then during the school year, I tend to do shorter things. So my second genre is poetry. So for the last couple months, when it's been just like insane at school, I started a practice of writing a poem every day. And it was just like I would read a poem in the morning and I would write a poem in the morning. And that was kind of my practice. And I could get some work done, feel good about it, and know that I could then come back to it later. And so, yeah, it just really depends on what I'm working on. Short stories, too, I can kind of work on for a little bit and come back to. But I just find if I'm working on a long project like a novel, I just need to have the focus where I can really work on a daily basis.
That unbroken time.
Mm.
And Lauren, I know you're also a teacher of writing. So how do you approach the work? Are you a daily person who approaches it daily, um, or similar to way Darcy does it, where it depends on the work?
It definitely depends on the work, but I'm very embarrassed to say I have not been writing consistently recently. I've been sort of in that like book business mode where I had, I was trying to find a publisher for many years for Depth Control than I did. And then right when that was coming out and I was trying to like do all the sort of publicity stuff, my second book was picked up and then I was doing all the edits for that. So I've been in this weird sort of like, nothing. And then like, boom, boom, two books in a row, which is wonderful. And I am not complaining about it at all. But I did sort of like throw off my momentum into a third project, which I've been working on for a while in my head. I will also say that this is a heavier research project that I'm starting in the sense that I have like a document with notes in it and then a lot of books and then a lot of like thoughts that I, bother my husband with over dinner, like, oh, what if I do it this way? What if I do it that way? But that's kind of where I am right now is like I'm in the mental, like,
Gymnastics of it.
yeah, like I'm trying to kind of immerse myself in like the ideas around what it's going to be so that I can start, but I'm also kind of like scared to start because it's like a very different thing and I have some imposter syndrome and I want to write about my hometown. So there's like some legit like historical research and I was thinking about actually a lot with Darcy's reading because of the wonderful detail about Eau Claire, Wisconsin and like the place-basedness of that and how rich it is when it's done well. It was really fabulous, Darcy. I enjoyed that so much. But I have some just basic barriers. My hometown's in Northern California. I don't live there, so I'm gonna have to get there at some point. There's all these logistics. So right now I'm kind of in this, like my process is more like listening to audiobooks and podcasts while I'm on a walk and I can take some notes, about like work that's similar in some way or another, whether it's formally or topically, that's kind of or like research that is informing my ideas of what kind of shape this book might take, and ways to get at the material in sort of this blend of like research and autoethnography and memoir and something else. Millennial reckoning is what I keep calling it because I really want to think about like how I grew up the way that I grew up and sort of like taking some inspiration too from Joan Didion's was it Where I Was From book about Sacramento, but for this other small town in Northern California. So yeah, I mean, I think it's on the one hand, I'm frustrated that I'm not writing on a regular basis, although I have Darcy's similar. I share the need to immerse myself sometimes, and the school year is not conducive to that for prose, I think, and sometimes for poems too. But I'm also just kind of like wrangling ideas right now in a way that doesn't quite work on paper yet. Like I need more space. So taking long walks with audiobooks and phone notes is kind of where I am.
Phone notes are important. They work. I know people who actually drive and speak phone notes into their phones and stuff. So,
Yeah.
some emerging writers or actually aspiring writers listen in. And what advice would you give to someone who wants to be where you are? I mean, when you don't have a book published, oh my God, that's all you can think about is getting a book published. Even though maybe the focus should be on the work itself. So, what do you want to tell aspiring writers about the writing process, the writing life, the writing craft, the craft of writing, or the writing, the writing life?
Yeah. I always, at the end of every semester, and now we're getting towards the end of the semester, thank God. I always like to share something that my dad said to me before he passed away, which was he got very serious and he said, "Listen, Darcy," he goes, "don't let anything stop you. Just keep going." And when I get frustrated, when I'm getting a lot of rejections, if I'm going through a dry spell where I just don't feel inspired, or I'm drafting and it's like shit and I'm not happy with it, I just think about my dad. And, I really feel that there's talent and then there's also hard work. And a lot of being a writer is about the hard work, the persistence, being able to persevere through rejection. And so I always like to share those words from my dad because I just think it's simple advice, but there's a lot of truth there.
Oh, I could definitely resonate with that. It's more hard work and perspiration more than inspiration. So, and
Yeah.
Lauren, what advice would you give an aspiring writer?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo, Darcy, that's very moving and very good advice. And I would echo that. I also, I think for me, saying to any authors who are still bookless out there right now, who are maybe listening to this, that I was bookless for a very long time, like I said, and then all of a sudden, now I have one out and one forthcoming, and that was really hard for me to even imagine ever possibly happening not that long ago at all. And one of the things that I learned, I think is really important, and I tell my students a lot, and I teach a lot of undergraduate creative writing students too, is it's really important to invest in what it is you want to create, whatever that thing is, and kind of stay true to that thing, because the dilution that comes from trying to, be all things to all people or please an audience that isn't really the audience for the thing you're trying to make is gonna water down what you're trying to do, and make it harder to find ultimately the right fit, the right home, editor, press, publisher, agent, whatever it is you're looking for, and therefore readers, right, for your work. So honestly, like what Darcy said, what Darcy's father said, and stick with it and do the hard work. But I think also just really own the thing spend the time figuring out what it is you really care most about doing, creating, making, and stick with that and have some faith in that you will not maybe have the thing that is the bestseller that a bajillion people want to read, but the people who want to read it, the people who need it are out there, and it's just a matter of finding them. It takes patience and persistence, but it's out there. There's something valuable and necessary about what you want to say in your writing, or in any of your artistic work, and say it, stick with it, find the people who need to hear it. They are out there.
Also very good advice. And then the last thing is at the AWP last month in LA, during her speech, Roxane Gay sort of like looked around at the situation that we're in this country right now. And she said something like, the pen is not a sword. I mean, the pen is not mightier than the sword. The pen is the sword. So, do you want to speak to that notion of here we are in fraught times and we are the warriors? We might be warriors with words, our words are our swords. So, do you both want to each address like the other work of writers, even though it might be unconscious.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's so much to be said for creating art from lived experience to show what people go through in their everyday lives based on who they are, where they came from. And I really feel that's one of the most powerful tools we have in combating some of the things that are going on right now, is appealing to people's humanity through art making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Lauren?
I would echo that too. Darcy's very articulate. That's exactly sort of what I was thinking of saying, something along those lines. Yeah, you know, the freedom of expression, to express and achieve empathy through the sharing of ideas, art, aesthetics, beauty, humor. You know, it's like the classic like humor is inherently anti-fascist. You know, you have to be able to, you know, like to make and create and laugh and connect is resistance, and it can be incredibly disheartening, I think, and it can feel like you're, but if you're me at least, sort of boxed into a corner writing about yourself, like, what the hell am I doing? What do I do right now in this crazy moment we are in? But yes, the you know, maintaining and fostering empathy, creativity, and communication, you know, really, and humanity is one of the most significant things we can do. And again, it might be reaching out to a couple people. It may not be some mass protest, but it's those, you know, reaching those people makes a difference.
Totally agree. And it seems like reading and writing are perhaps the most subversive things that we can be doing these days. So we are being subversive just by being ourselves.
Yeah.
So we're actually at time. I want to thank Lauren and Darcy for wonderful readings this evening. I want to thank the plethora of listener ins, you know, our audience that we had this evening. Many thanks for all your comments, and we hope that you will tune in again. Our next reading is on May 14th. I know, I think it's May 14th. Let me check. Yes, it's May 14th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:30 p.m. Pacific Time. So we hope you'll all come back then again to listen to our two new readers. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Darcy, for sharing your wonderful and inspiring work with us this evening. Good night, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.